All right. Welcome back to Introduction to Sociology. Um, the lecture that we are going to cover today is Gender and Society. So you should have read the readings about gender, and then we're going to talk about that today. We're also going to discuss your in-class essay, as well as an assignment that that you have to complete as well. So we're going to talk about all of those in this lecture. And if you have any questions, as always, you can reach out to me. So let's get started. First thing, in-class essay. So on June 10th, you will be given 2 essay prompts. Okay, you're going to choose one, and you are going to be required to address all parts of the prompt in a 5-paragraph essay. Your essay must be in your own words and include an introduction with an underlined thesis statement, 3 paragraphs with major points, details that support your thesis statement, and a concluding paragraph that summarizes your thesis statement and the 3 main points. Each of your paragraphs must consist of 5 or more sentences that adequately support your thesis statement and help to address all points of the essay prompt. Make sure that you use details from the readings, lectures, and notes to help substantiate your argument. Extensive details can significantly help your score on the essay. Okay, so when you're doing this essay, generally, if we were in person, then you would not be able to use your notes. But since you can use your notes, I'm going to expect some detail. And I don't necessarily want you to copy and paste, but I want you to be able to refer to your notes, your readings, the lectures, all of those things when you're answering these questions. So I will be grading you pretty strongly because you have open notes. So you should be able to pull from the videos and the things that we've been discussing in your lectures and your notes when you're doing your in-class essay. Okay. So that's very, very important. Okay. When you're doing this essay, um, I'm gonna expect it to, I am not going to expect you to give basic answers and very generic answers around gender and race and class and sociological imagination. I'm gonna expect you to be, to really pull from the things that we've been discussing. Again, you don't have to copy and paste if the essay prompt is about sociological imagination. I don't want you to just copy and paste everything in the reading, but I want you to be able to pull from it. I want you to be able to talk about troubles and issues. I want you to be able to discuss it in your own words so that I can tell that you have a good understanding of what it is that we're talking about. Your in-class essay will be available Friday, June 10th at 12 a.m. So soon, just like everything else, just like your quizzes, just like your exam, as soon as it hits 12 a.m. on Friday, it'll be available. You will have 1 day to complete the essay. So it will be due by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, June 10th. So you have that full 24 hours. This is something that we have discussed, so you should already know that this is coming up. You will choose one of the two prompts, and type your essay in a Word document, and you will submit your essay under the assignments tab in Canvas before the deadline that says essay prompt. Okay, so make sure, just like your exam, just like everything else, make sure that you submit it on time so that you are prepared. Okay, and you have it in, and you're prepared for your grade. So I'm going to tell you, just to give you an idea of the topics that will be on the essay, and then it will be up to you to study them and then be prepared for 2 of them. So I'm going to give you like quite a few topics, and then you will then choose. There will be two given to you on Friday, and then you will choose one to actually write about. Okay. Um, same thing as your exam. Um, you're gonna upload the document with your essay in Word or PDF format. If you upload it in a different format, you won't receive a grade. The whole thing about, my Canvas isn't working, my device stopped working, all those things. Can I turn my essay in late? No. Make sure you are on a device where you can download and upload the essay prompt and your response. Make sure you are somewhere where you have Wi-Fi. Late and or email submissions will result in significant point deductions. After 10 minutes, you will not be able to submit the essay at all. So same thing with the paper. Sorry, not paper. Same thing with the exam. Submit the essay early, complete the essay in the library next to a computer. If you're having trouble, make sure you save the document. You can restart your device. Everything that I'm going over with your exam and all those options are also options for your essay. So please, please, please make sure that you are somewhere where you can submit it and that you're completing the essay on a device that is on a device that will support this assignment, on a device where it is reliable. Okay. So these are some of your possible essay topics. One possible essay topic will be explain sociology, the sociological imagination, and the early concepts of sociology and how it all began. Another possible essay topic will be explain in detail systemic racism and the historical analysis and events associated with it. How do we see elements of systemic racism in our country today, specifically as it relates to the results of a racist foundation? Again, the more detail, the more you can expound on this, the better your grade. Explain poverty and the various elements of it, describe the social constructions of poverty, and the popular discussions that are both true and false about poverty. And then lastly, explain the difference between sex and gender and how gender is socially constructed in our society. Also explain the evolution of the American family and how gender inequality is evident in specific areas / institutions in our society. And so that gender one is what we're going to talk about today. So you can have a good idea of, if you decide that you want to do that paper, you can have a good understanding of that. Remember, those are the kind of 4 that you might want to study. I'm only going to pick 2 out of those. And then out of those 2, you're going to have to respond to one, whichever one you would like to. Okay. Okay. So with that being said, let's get started. So in gender, these are some of the learning objectives that I will want you to walk away with by the time this lecture is over. 1, I would like for you to know the difference between sex and gender. Number 2, I would like for you to know the ways in which gender is about what we do, in addition to being about who we are. Number 3, I want you to know the ways that gender inequality shapes our life or our lives. And number 4, I want you to know about some of the social theories about why gender inequality persists. Okay. First thing, next slide. Gender is a way for society to divide people into 2 categories, men and women. So when we think about gender, we think about the fact that our society says that everybody is a part of 1 or 2 categories. Either you are a man or you are a woman. As of recently, we have now found the language and we have now found the phrasing to include more than 1 gender, non-binary, transgender. So these are now acceptable terms, acceptable names that our society is slowly but surely accepting and receiving. But still, even in that, in general, the more common place Largely majority accepted idea is that there are still only two genders, men and women. That is still, in terms of probably the majority of people and what a majority of people would like to accept, that it is this thing we call the gender binary, right? And this gender binary is based on what the next slide says, is this idea of essentialism. Essentialism, or another term for that, is biological determinism. And essentialism or biological determinism is the idea that there is a set of attributes which are necessary to gender and its function, meaning that in order for a person to be considered a man, or in order for a person to be considered a woman, there are a set of attributes that are aligned with that sexual category. Right? This is what we call gender. These characteristics, these personality traits, these traditions, these intrinsic behaviors are the things that are necessary and gives credence to your gender. So essentially, essentialism fuels our belief in differences. It fuels our belief, or it is the perspective that corroborates the belief that people of a certain gender are going to behave in a certain way. So sex and sexual categories will say, this person is a man, this person is a woman. Gender says, if this person is a man, then that means that this person will be big and strong. They will show little emotion. They will be good at math. They will be more likely to be a leader, an effective leader, than someone outside of their category. They will enjoy sports. They will enjoy beer. And they will be prepared to protect whatever it is that they acquire or that they love. They will be able to protect that. If a person falls into the category of a woman, then they are soft, they are passionate, they are loving, they are caring, they are nurturing, they want to have children, they want to have a family. That is gender. Those characteristics are gender. So when we take into account this idea of gender, it fuels the belief that if you fall into these categories, then you will have these certain characteristics or personality traits. Historically, scientists and psychologists have tried to prove women's inferiority by using biological determinism or essentialism. Okay, and some of the ways in which it has done this, or they have done this, is by studying the brain sizes of men and women, studying the hormones, their mathematical abilities, all in ways to support this idea that men are naturally good at certain things and women are naturally good at certain things. And so we know that gender is socially constructed largely because of this idea. Remember, what does it mean for something to be socially constructed? If something is socially constructed, then that means that it is this idea that has been created and accepted by people in society. That's what it means when we say that gender is socially constructed. There's this idea that people in society came up with. They created it, they created an acceptance for it, they created a disassociation for it, and that's what it is. That means that gender can be defined and redefined by the people based on social movements, based on generational change, based on time. So that's what we mean when we say gender is socially constructed. Society decides what gender is. Society decides what it is. And society may change depending on the time period. So gender is socially constructed because in some ways, gender dictates what a person has access to in terms of healthcare. Gender changes over time because what it meant to be a woman in the 1800s is different from what it means to be a woman in the 1900s, and it's different from what it means to be a woman in the 2000s. So gender is socially constructed because gender changes and it gets defined and it gets redefined. Okay. Gender is socially constructed because your gender dictates the opportunities that you have. It dictates whether people can pass laws that govern what you do with your body. Gender is socially constructed because gender and race and gender can absolutely dictate what happens to you if you're giving birth to your child and whether you will live or die. Race and gender has an effect on that. So it is socially constructed. But remember, it is socially constructed, meaning that it has been created and accepted by people in society. That means people in society have accepted certain rules around gender and around race and gender that have been problematic. Gender is not the only identity that is socially constructed, because we've talked about race, we've also talked about class. All of these things are socially constructed: race, class, gender, sociological triumvirate. Okay, and so all of these things are socially constructed, right? Which means that society came up with the names and the descriptions for these phrases. So, sex versus gender. Now, sex is referred to as the physical differences of your body. Men have a penis, women have a vagina. There's a clear difference. Women have larger or more evidence of breasts. Generally, men don't. Some men might, but generally men don't. So sex is the physical differences of a body. And some people may say that's biological, but then even sex can be socially constructed. Because if you have a child and there are what they say 1 in every 1,000 child is born with both male and female genitalia. So if a child is born with both male and female genitalia, what has to happen to that child before they leave the hospital? Before they leave the hospital, that child has to get one of those snipped now or tucked under. Now, I think some things have changed. You know, there have been some fights against that, but there was a time where you could not walk out of that hospital with 2 reproductive organs. So either the parents would choose or the doctor would choose what that baby will grow up to become. If you sew up the vagina and they do some stuff to it, then the baby has a penis and the baby's a boy. If you cut off the penis or do something with the penis and you let the vagina continue to develop, then, right? So that is sex. But the difference between sex and gender is the fact that while sex is biological, gender is psychological, social, and cultural differences between males and females. So these are the differences between men and women, some of the cultural differences in terms of gender that we're going to go over in a second. And so gender reflects those behaviors that are considered to be appropriately masculine or appropriately feminine. And so in this, we're going to talk more about how gender is about what we learn and what we do. That is gender. That means you can be of a masculine sexual category and embody a gendered woman because of these attributes and these ideas that are largely associated with women. So gender is about you learning something and then doing something. That's what gender is about. Now, there's been a lot of debate on podcasts and on interviews and things like that. And people are asking about this idea of gender roles. Some people say we move past that. We don't want to do gender roles anymore. Some people say we need to go back to gender roles. So the gender role traditionally was that the masculine man would take care of things related to strength, aggressiveness, and brawn. But the feminine norms are said to be fragile, sensitive, and emotional. These are said to be the softer characteristics, the softer descriptions for a feminine person. Okay. Next slide, gender role socialization. So we do not just learn gender out the gate. We are socialized to certain things. We are praised when we wear certain pants or when we pick out a certain color, or when, if you're a girl but you're not, if you're a girl but you're not doing something in pink, then that could be a deviance from the gender norms. So gender role socialization is the process through which we learn what it means to be male and female. That's where we learn ideas about male and female traditions, male and female personalities. So gender role socialization is something that we learn, but we don't learn from a book. Oftentimes, we don't learn from just one movie or documentary, just over time, going to school, hanging with our families, watching TV. We start to see these things as socializing agents. And these socializing agents teach us what it means to be a man or a woman, or sometimes it makes fun of the idea that we are a one man and two women. Or this idea that we are men and women, it's still taught in a very similar way through these socializing agents. Education, right? Teaches us women go first, let the ladies go first. You probably heard that in the pre-K classroom, right? Families teach us that if a mother is telling her daughter, you have a boyfriend, go fix him his plate, especially in the South, right? Go fix him his plate. He shouldn't have to get up, right? These traditional gendered, these are socializing agents in the media. You can have more than one boyfriend, more than one husband, whatever your preference is, right? New age women. So these things teach us what it means to be a man or a woman, whether good, bad, or indifferent. Now, one thing about learning gender is there is something called the hidden curriculum. And the hidden curriculum are the covert lessons that schools often teach to use as a form of social control. So it's ways in which we are teaching gendered dynamics and gendered ideas when we say things like, you tap a little girl, hey girl, cover up your legs, right? We're teaching them these kind of hidden curriculums These things that oftentimes we overlook, when in actuality, it's one of the major parts of the ongoing growth process for children is to know the rules around gender and who should act like what. So just some examples, right? Gendered colors, right? Blue is for boy, pink is for girl, okay? Be quiet versus sit down. Sometimes we might tell a boy, sit down, or we may tell a girl, please be quiet, right? These are hidden curriculums to show the differences between boys and girls, men and women. We might tell a boy, stop doing it. But then we might tell a girl, Misty, you need to change your behavior. So children will resist these gendered hidden curriculums, but then at some point they start to adopt them, and even if they don't realize it, they're adopting these hidden curriculums as they move forward in life. And if you don't, then if you don't abide by these hidden curriculums, or if you don't abide by these gender roles, sometimes there could be a backlash in society, right? Okay, so let's look at this thing that says gender in everything. Gender in everything. The first thing we see is this thing called men's bread. Why is there this thing called men's bread? Raise your hand if you think that men eat bread that's different from women. I don't think anybody knows of any bread specific to men. If men are the only ones that are supposed to eat this bread. That doesn't sound right. All right? That doesn't sound right. So this idea that there's men's bread shows that gender is literally in everything. People market gender with everything that they do. There's no bread that is specific or unique to men. Look at these two sprinkles. You have two different types of sprinkles, boy sprinkles and girl sprinkles. The boy sprinkles are blue with looks like dinosaurs on them, and the girl sprinkles are pink and red and white with hearts on them. And it sends a certain message to the young lady and the young man to say that men are adventurous and men are dangerous and women are caring and loving and soft. Even if we look at the two computers on the right-hand side, same computer, same laptop, desktop and printer and everything, but what's the difference? There's a key difference in those two pictures. Both same price, both got the same, made by the same company. But we see the girls as Barbie and the boys as Hot Wheels. And if we look at the accoutrements, if we look at what comes in addition to the product, women have a camera and boys have a race car. What are they trying to insinuate by having the girl with the camera and the boy with the race car, and everything is still the same price? It suggests that men are more likely to decide that they want to drive fast cars, and little boys and men aren't really interested in cameras. Well, that's interesting, because I'm pretty sure if I go to each person's Instagram page, if you have an Instagram page or TikTok page in this classroom, I guarantee I'll probably see pictures of you. So women aren't the only ones that like to take pictures. Men like to take pictures too. Also, men aren't the only ones that are drag racing or racing cars. Women do too. Okay. And even if you look at this truck set, there's a truck crayon set for the boys, and then there's a princess crayon set for the girls. So again, this shows that gender is in every aspect of our lives. If we look deep enough, we can see how the things that we go to the store and buy are specifically designed to reinforce gender in our societies. Okay. So let's look at this activity, right? That we're going to do. Activity assignment. And what I want you to do for the next 5 minutes, I want you to think of as many movies that you can that meets the following criteria. It has at least 2 women in it. The 2 women talk to each other, and the 2 women talk to each other about something other than men. So I want you to think about that for 5 minutes. I want you to write those down. For the next 5 minutes, write those down, and then we'll go from there. Okay. After the 5 minutes are up, what movies did you think about? And how many were there? Probably not that many. Where there was a movie with at least 2 women in it. The 2 women talk to each other, and also they have names, and the 2 women talk to each other about something other than men. Or that men was a major part of the storyline. Something where men were not like a major part of the storyline. Probably not that many movies that you can think of. Now, what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to click on this link, and I would like for you to watch this little short video, very, very short, that explains this test that we just did. So now you can see that this idea of women in the media specifically is problematic. Not the fact that women in the media are problematic, but how women are portrayed in the media is problematic. And we see that by looking at this Bechdel test. So without me giving you the words to say, I just want you to type up a quick paragraph explaining the ways women are stratified in the media. Okay, when we say stratified, we just mean, how there is a hierarchy in terms of women in the media and who is typically going to be praised in this patriarchal society in the media more than this other type of woman. And so I want you to talk about that a little bit using things that we've talked about in this lecture so far, and reflect on what you learned from this exercise. Okay, doesn't have to be long, just something that's meaty and kind of gives me an understanding that what so far what we've been talking about when it comes to gender and how it applies to women in the media. To upload this paragraph on Canvas under your gender assignment before June 10th, 11:59. So in addition to your in-class essay, this is also due. The difference is your in-class essay, you only have 1 day to do that. This you have all week. So that's why I don't feel bad giving you this. Okay. Gender inequality. Gender inequality is the difference in the status, power, and prestige that women and men have in groups, collectives, and societies. So when we talk about gender inequality, we're talking about the ways in which women are marginalized in society and how they are minorities, not by sheer numbers. If we look to sheer numbers, there are actually more women in the United States than there are men, but women have less access to the resources and power than men do. Okay. And that is why there is a level of gender inequality. Gender inequality in terms of status, prestige, power, wealth, and or income. And so when we think about gender inequality in American society, we actually have to go all the way back to the evolution of the American family, right? So the American family started out, if we want to go back to like the 17th century, right? 16th, 17th century, um, maybe even the 18th century, we know that America was largely an agrarian society. Okay. That means you work, you ate. Whatever you worked and put in the ground, that's what you ate on. Okay. But, well, and so because of that, the argument then is that there was less gender inequality when the class status or the opportunities that were available to human beings were a lot less. Gender equality was much more equal when life was not as sophisticated for human beings. A lot of people don't want to believe that. A lot of people will say, so what you're saying that there's more sexism now than there was in the early part of America's history? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, we actually get more unequal, more prejudice, and more discriminatory the more sophisticated we get. So in the latter part of the 19th century, there was this thing called the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution gave birth to the factories, which gave birth to the new urban modern city. And so men started to leave home to work in factories. Instead of working from home now, they have to leave the home to work and get a paycheck and then bring it back to the house. And so this is starting to shift the American family because now men are leaving home, women are at home by themselves. And the fact that now the source of income is based on the jobs that you can get and the money that you can bring, that then gives a person pride in being able to support their family. You've now taken women away from that pride by replacing their jobs with something else and then not allowing them to work those jobs. So men leaving home to go work in factories left them from their children. The women are now having to take care of the children. Children are seen as liabilities and not assets. In the rural area, you have a bunch of kids. Why? Because when they get older, they can help you out here in the yard. They can help you on the farm. So they were an asset in rural areas, but now that we're becoming more and more bigger cities in America, they're like, no, we can't have a whole bunch of kids running around the city. 7, 8, 10, 13, 14 kids. No. And who were the ones that were giving birth to these liabilities? Women. So women stopped lowered, for lack of a better term. The idea of a woman and the significance of a woman in society began to decrease. Education, recreation, caring for children moved from family duties to institutional jobs. Is also a big example of how gender has caused such a shift in our society, right? Over time, though, in the 1960s, dating norms emerged and it was fueled by movie industry, and that became, probably in the early 20th century, that became a popular site for first dates. Women left home for paid employment, right? So all of these are ways in which kind of like the American family has kind of evolved. And while at the same time showing the resistance that many US families, particularly Black ones, fought against the criminal justice system, fought against the racist system so that they could stay with their families. Sometimes they were able to, sometimes they weren't. Right? So when we talk about the evolution of the American family, we're talking about how it has changed from men leaving home to go to work, children go from being assets to being liabilities, The education, recreation, caring for children moved from family duties to institutional jobs. And so now instead of the mother working, or I'm sorry, instead of, yes, the mother or the grandmother doing some of these jobs, now daycares are doing the jobs. Elderly facilities are doing these jobs. Dating norms emerged. Women left home for paid employment. And so now the American family started to shift and change. Now, instead of women being home taking care of the kids, now we have daycares. Now we have older facilities to take care of the parents. And so the American family has changed a lot. And the value of women went up when they started to get jobs and contribute to the economy. But that is how our society places value on people. How much money can you make? What is your earning capacity, your earning potential? Okay. Also, with the evolution of the American family, what we start to see is with the dating norms emerge, when the fuel industry emerged, that was also a time where you saw women with shorter and shorter skirts. There was this kind of free liberation time, particularly around the arts. Women who were okay with having, non-marital sex, big deal at that time. So the American family is changing. It's growing, changing in some ways for the better, but definitely some ways for the worse for some people. Right. And so, but we can clearly see the gender divide, particularly as it pertains to the perspective of women in that society. And so now we come a little bit closer to home. Inequality in the traditional family. How many of you have ever watched Dennis the Menace or Leave It to Beaver? And if you did, you probably saw a young kid living in a nice house. Mom was always home. Dad was always working. And then he would come home and sit in his favorite chair and kick up his feet and put down his briefcase. And Dennis the Menace would run around the house, or Leave It to Beaver or something, would run around the house and get into trouble. And it just kind of presented this idea of the 1950s perfect family. But an author by the name of Kuntz says that's not how it was. In fact, the 1950s show some of the highest rates of teen pregnancy. It also shows that there were high rates of rape within a marriage, where women did not have any control over their movement or their sexuality. There was violence in the family. It was openly accepted for a man to spank his wife in a violent way. This is a clipping from the 1960s that says if a man needs it, if a woman needs it, should she be spanked? And I know you can't read all of what was said in that clip or what was said in this JPEG, but all these men say yes, women deserve to be spanked. This was actually in a very prominent newspaper in New York. So there was a lot of inequality in the traditional family, a lot of control over women's movements and their sexuality. And what we're going to end up finding is this foundational part of the inequality in the traditional family is going to start to spread to other parts of our society. Also, another way in which there's gender inequality in the family is when we read Ollie Hochschild's book or Ollie Hochschild's work, The Second Shift. And the second shift is the unpaid work that employed women perform when they return home from their jobs. This is something that you probably seen when you were growing up. Let's say you had two parents, or stepdad and stepmom or whatever. You probably saw your dad come home from work and just sit down. He may watch the game, he may do some other stuff. But women Oftentimes, when they get off of work, they go into a second shift. They're cleaning, they're cooking, they're helping the kids with the homework. They are making sure everything is okay. That's called the second shift. That means these women are getting off work and going on to another job. Now, somebody may argue, well, men do things around the house as well. We cut the yard, we rake the leaves, we take out the trash, we fix things that need to be fixed. But how often do these things have to happen? I have a house. I have a house that I need to tend to and look after and change things and fix things. But that doesn't happen every day. Not even every week. Not even every month. Ooh, if it's not happening every month, I want to look into some things. But men's jobs do not require as much time as women's jobs. And so this unpaid work that employed women perform when they return home from their paid jobs is what we call the second shift. Now that I'm home, I need to wash the dishes, feed the kids, make sure they do their homework, everything. And this is another way in which there is this kind of gender inequality in the family. In addition to that, you have gender inequality in the workplace. Women's participation in the labor force rose in the 50s. We've seen the Rose the Riveter symbol. For a long time, women could not participate in the labor force, and women tended to hold positions that were lower in status compared to men. But for the men, they had something called the glass elevator, and for the women, they had something called the glass ceiling. What do those things mean? Well, the glass ceiling means that you can look up, you can see the opportunity, and when you try to go, you keep hitting that ceiling. And you don't know why, because all you're trying to do is reach for the goal. Glass elevator says, don't have to do much. Got to do a little bit, but don't have to do much, and I can just get on this elevator and go to the top. And basically what this is arguing is that women oftentimes see in the elevator a glass ceiling. They know that they can get to the top. They know that they can get to a point where they can be a CEO or boss. They can be someone who plays a significant role. But when they try to climb, they come up with all different types of excuses. There are all different types of reasons why women cannot lead. Okay. Also, when we talk about gender inequality in the workplace, look at the gender pay gap. The wage gap is insane. Even going back to 2016, it's not the lowest it's ever been. It's also not the highest. It's just there. Well, in terms of, with men, but with men and women, it's still a gap, very large gap. And what should those numbers be? It should be 1 and 1. If a man does a good job, he should get paid a certain amount. If a woman does a good job, she gets paid a certain amount. That is the same as men. So this wage gap is probably one of the more significant points of the idea of gender inequality. Okay. And lastly, if we just look at some of these earnings, we'll see the big difference between men and women, right? And let's see what state or what city seems to be somewhat the closest, even though they're not fully the closest. It looks like it's Washington, D.C. Florida is actually number 7. Okay. Average man makes 45,000 or 40,000. The average woman makes 34,000. That's low, right? So these are the charts that you can read to kind of see where we are in terms of gender and how gender affects class, right? How gender affects our income, our money, the level of inequality that we have in our society. Okay. All right, I think that is it. you can, when this lecture is over, you can go ahead and click the other lecture where we will be discussing Patricia Hill Collins, Black Feminist Thought. Okay. So that gives us the opportunity to combine race and gender. Okay. So yes, so with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Hope you understood everything. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I will do my best to respond my earliest convenience. Have a great day, great week, great weekend. See you soon.